Welcome everybody to an AMA with Michelle Brenner here at Mintbean. Michelle Brenner is a senior engineer at Netflix. She is a conference speaker, a podcast host as well, and she's here to share her insights in the format of an AMA. AMA, for those who don't know, is Ask Me Anything. So how this works is you ask questions, Michelle answers them, and I'll be hanging around over here in case there aren't any questions, and I can act as a rubber ducky for Michelle to debug this podcast. Well, this broadcast, I should say. Michelle, take it away.
Hi. So, as I said, I'm Michelle. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Right now, I'm a senior software engineer at Netflix, but I've been in tech for 10, almost 11 years. So, what I'd like to do first is like housekeeping is that, I want this to be extremely interactive. I want you to be able to answer questions. So, I have the chat open. Interrupt me at any time. Uh, the consequences of not interrupting me is that I can talk nonstop for an hour about myself, which is like fun for me, but maybe not as fun for you. Maybe you had something you specifically wanted to get out of today. So I'm just gonna get started, but you can ask me about what I'm talking about, because I'm gonna go like chronologically. But if you have any questions about podcasts, about conferences, about Netflix, about being an engineer, about being working as an engineer in entertainment, about being self-taught, specific Python questions, you can try to quiz me and I will forget how to do anything because I Google them every time. But anything really, I'm happy to answer. Just put it in the chat. So I don't see any questions yet, so I'll just start with my story. So yeah, so around 10 and a half years ago, actually, so before that, when I was 17, I decided to go to art school because I was obsessed with Shrek of all things. So I was making like really good decisions at the time. I thought it was like the coolest thing that had happened to animation. I was like, oh, I just want to be an animator. I want to be an artist. I want to make Shreks 2 through 20. I was late to the game. I didn't get to make any Shrek. Um, but I did go to art school. And that worked out so well that I spent 2 years after that working in a mailroom, stuffing bulk mail and learning about like USPS procedures, which is a really, useful and exciting job. Um, but then I got my big break and I started working in entertainment. And I see some questions. So before I get into actually working in tech and my first tech job, I'm gonna answer some questions. Uh, yeah, this is a great segue. So someone asked, Allie asked, as a new incoming graduate into the field of Java development, I'm finding hard to find entry-level jobs. My question is, when you first got started, who gave you a shot as a woman in the field of software development, and was it difficult at first? Yes, like as you heard, I worked for 2 years in a mailroom, so I wasn't doing anything artistic, anything technical. I was just getting a paycheck. And that time I was applying for literally every job under the sun, but no one wanted me. And then I went to this conference called SIGGRAPH, and I cannot like emphasize enough how important conferences and networking are because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So there's this conference called SIGGRAPH that is for focus on entertainment and animation. And I was a volunteer, so I got like a little scholarship to go. Um, and as part of being a volunteer, they introduce you to companies that had entry level positions. So I met my first boss. Her name was Andrea Pace, and she was amazing. She built this team up of what we'd call now support engineers. So it'd be someone who's technical but not necessarily has a huge software background, and basically you were the frontline support for artists in a VFX company. So that was my first job, and it was learning Python and writing like little scripts, like every morning send a report out of what's how the systems are going, or send alerts when the disk is low and things like that. So it wasn't like I started with straight software development. It was a lot of customer service and moving files around and keeping an eye on dashboards. So closer to like a very junior um, SRE rather than software development. But it was a great path for me because I got to combine my love of art with technology, and I was able to learn on the job, which was really important to me. And then slowly over time, get better at the engineering aspect. So now I can take the straight like engineering jobs. So yeah, so I would say yes. So in like the TLDR of that is networking and knowing people and going to many events and talking to people and asking them what options there are and being open to jobs that not necessarily exactly what you see on the job boards, and trying to find if there are any specific like niche entry level roles that can get you in, like QA or support engineer. Okay, next question. As someone who goes to a non-target school, how can I maximize my chance of getting a FANG interview or an internship? Besides FANG internships, what other things can I do to set myself up for a successful career? I have no idea how to get a FANG internship because I didn't have an internship in college. I know how to get a job at Netflix, but I don't know. Answering about internships now won't help you since I didn't have one. 1 second. I will say that when I am hiring entry level people, what I look for is not necessarily knowledge, but ability to learn. So showing a pattern of I had to learn this for something, and this is how I did it is really useful versus like here's like all the skills I have, because you probably don't have production ready skills, but if you can show you can learn, that's really the important part. Um, and just keeping in mind that you are going to be a lifetime learner in technology. Like I've had to learn a new tool this week. Like it doesn't matter how long you're in the industry, technology is constantly changing and problems change. So you're constantly like the skill of seeing a problem, breaking it down, learning new things is much more important than what specific skills you have right now, right? So that'll take you further in your career because things are always going to change. And I would never say like, oh, learn Python, learn Java. This is like what you need to learn right now. It's more like, go where the problems are that interest you and know that you're constantly going to be learning and changing and building your skills over time. And there'll never be a point where you're just like, there's nothing more to learn. And if you're in that point, you might be in the wrong job because then you're just gonna like stagnate, and that's no fun. Because I think that's part of the fun of technology is that like little frisson of fear you get when someone asks you to do something that you don't know how to do, and you're like, oh no, I'll never figure this out. But like you will. Like that's what Google and Stack Overflow is for. You'll figure it out. What does someone hiring a web developer look for in a portfolio projects for a potential candidate? So it depends what job you're looking for. Like, are you looking for front end? Are you looking for back end? Are you looking for infrastructure? But I tend to tell people to try to do a very small project that actually works. Like, I would rather have a project that has like an API, a small web front end, that's launched in the cloud that does almost nothing, that has like 3 endpoints, but shows that you understand the infrastructure of how the web works. And it's just like a tiny project, whether it's like a to-do list or like something very, very simple, but shows like, oh, I understand how you build something and all the little pieces, because you can always grow that out more. But like understanding that architecture, I think is really important rather than something that's like flashy. If you're going more towards a UI and design side, I haven't done a lot of that, so there's probably more to that of showing something that looks good, is accessible, makes sense. So that's more towards UI. But in terms of like back end and infrastructure, I like that people understand like this is what, like what an EC2 instance is and how you get your code onto that instance and things like that. And make sure you have a working project as opposed to this like complex, like I'm gonna change the world app. I'd rather see, you know, just the fact that it works and I can access it either from like my computer or my phone. Okay, what's next? Do I have a computer science degree? No, I have a bachelor's in animation. So that helped me understand entertainment, but not algorithm challenges, which are the worst, as we all know. What age did I get my first tech job? Now I have to do math. 25, maybe, if my math is correct. What does a typical day look like working at Netflix? So, um, as a senior engineer at Netflix, the kind of the idea is that you just solve the problems that are there, and there's a lot of freedom to solve those problems. So it really depends on where I am in a project. So there's no real like typical day, but I can talk about some of the tasks I have. So at the beginning of the project, it's identifying a problem and saying, hey, we need to do this thing for our user. So just to give some context, at Netflix, I work, there's kind of two parts of it, how I define it. There's the streaming side and then the content side, and I work on the content side. So on the content side, I'm helping artists create original content and making tools for them to make that more efficient and at scale. Um, and that's kind of, I didn't get far in my story because there's been lots of questions, but that's been my whole background has been in entertainment. I was at Sony for 5 years and then Technicolor for 2 years and like a small detour into food tech at a startup just to try it out, but then right back into Netflix. So I've been helping artists create movies. Unfortunately, I've never gotten to work on a Shrek movie, but maybe one day to make my dreams come true. But my whole career has been entertainment. So I'm on the content side. I identify problems. I have meetings with people to discuss whether these are the right problems to solve. And if these are the right problems to solve, how do we want to tackle it? Um, I break them down to small problems and I say, hey, is there already a tool or a service, especially a big company in Netflix, that can solve this problem for us? And then I go bug people in a bunch of other departments, people I don't know. I just kind of like look around who might know information about this and gather that and say, hey, here's some services we could use. Um, so um, once I know like, oh, here's the stuff I could use, but here's like the new stuff I need to make to build it, that's when it's kind of like heads down coding, trying stuff out. One of the other things I really like is the freedom to build my own infrastructure at Netflix. So I can like launch instances and try things out on the cloud and try things out in like a really real environment so that I know when I actually launch in a production environment, it's actually going to work because I've already tried it out and a very close clone in a test environment. So it's a combination of organizing what I'm going to do for the day, what I'm going to do on a project, seeing what is already available and what I actually have to do, doing it, and then reporting back and showing people how I've done it. And then inside of that, if I can't figure something out or I want to propose something, we call it short pitches. I'll write something out that says like, here's the problem, here's like 3 solutions, like, and then I'll gather a bunch of people together and be like, hey, what solution do you think is good for this? And we'll do the pros and cons, and then I'll pick one, and then I'll move forward with it. Um, and then then after I build something, I then have to support it. I was actually on call yesterday. Everyone takes turns on call. If you make something that someone else uses, you have to be ready to support it. So that encourages you to test and be careful with your deploys and document things. So it's kind of the whole gamut of engineering skills that you need, and not just like deep into like one thing. Like I'm working mostly on Java right now, but I wouldn't say my majority of my day is actually getting to work in Java. It's more making sure I'm working on the right thing and then implementing it. Okay, someone asked, how does the communication chain work as a software engineer, specifically Netflix? Do you communicate with producers, directors, creators, or customers about their projects on the platform, or just other tech people? I communicate with everyone um, because it's important to understand where people are coming from. There are like layers, right? Like I'm not the first on-call person that an artist is going to talk to because if they just need to like restart their machine or reset a password, they don't need to come to me just because they're like using a system that I use. But things will get escalated, and I'll talk to people directly. Not often. I usually there's like a layer in VFX and animation. So there's usually like core engineers who just build things, and then there's engineers that it's called technical directors. Those are people who are more artistic than engineers, but more technical than artists. So they're like the layer in between, and those are the people I normally talk to. I call them like power user artists, like people that really understand the artist tools very deeply. But also if I tell them like, hey, I can't do this feature, but here's the API if you want to write your own Python script, kind of like the thing that I was doing 10 years ago, um, they'll be able to handle that. And then also be able to give me like very good technical feedback about, here's the project I worked on. Tell me exactly, what you're gonna do. So there's a lot of communication going on all over the place, but I would say the majority of my communication is with the more technical people, and then get into the artists when like, they need to give me feedback, or I need someone to try something out, um, when I have something coming, or I'm just starting a new project and I'm like, I just want to gather as much feedback from everyone and just like write everything down and say like, hey, what's your giant wish list? And then I only do like one of 100 things that they ask for. Do you have any techniques or tricks for dissecting problems to solve them? So, uh, my biggest, well, it depends whether it's like something crashed or I need to build something. So right now I'm building a big project, and the important thing for me was to get an MVP working end to end with the singular number one feature. So and not worrying about all the side features, just getting it work, because once you have something working on the core one happy path, then building features on top of it is so much easier. When you try to build a lot of features at once, you just like build this mess and you don't get that feeling of accomplishment. So I just started a new project, and we're done the MVP in 6 weeks because it was a 3-person team. And the reason we got it done is because we were very strategic in using other tools, using tools that were available, and also, it's going to do this one thing. It's not going to do 100 other things. And everyone wants those other things, but they're not going to get them yet because I need to prove out the concept of it goes from A to B, and now I can add all the other features on top of it. I can make it more production ready and things like that. So just being very focused on what your goal is, and every time you want to do something, saying like, "Is this MVP?" is like super important. Like, is this actually affecting what you want to do? So a good example is this project I did outside of entertainment when I was at this company called Chow Now, and we wanted to integrate um, Google Food Ordering into our app. And that's Google Food Ordering is when you go to Google Maps and you search for a restaurant, it says like order online. Like I help with that button. And every time someone asked me to do something, I would say, ask for feature, I would say, is this helping a customer get an order? Is it necessary for them to get it ordered? Oh, no, it's not. Then you don't get that feature. Like until that core feature is done, just making sure that you completely focus on that. And then on the flip side, if something crashes, like you have an incident, um, gathering as much logs as possible, gathering as many people as possible, just trying to like go through your mind of like past situations, like what has happened. Okay, like if you just have crash and no error codes you can Google or anything like that, I think like what are the core components of the system? Okay, there's storage, there's networking, there's these 3 services, and just like what has changed since the last time this has worked? What is different between the things that are working and not working? And just coming at it with lots of different angles to try to narrow down the scope of what is the actual problem until you find the solution. And sometimes it takes, you and 10 other engineers. Sometimes you can easily find it because it's something you're familiar with. So it really depends, but it's all about narrowing the scope of the problem and understanding all the facets of it, and like trying to like drill down to like what is the actual thing that is broken and how can you patch it, and then how can you have a long-term fix so this doesn't happen again. What is your experience in the difference between interviewing and working in a FANG company versus a company where software isn't the product? Well, software isn't the product of Netflix. Making entertainment is the product. So my real focus is making sure the artist can work. Um, if an artist is calling me, it is the worst part of their day, because if they're not working, people need to work to get paid to make things, and deadlines aren't moving. So if technology is causing them a problem, it's the worst. So so I think that's very different than say working at like Facebook or Google, where there's like, you know 100 million customers versus like I have a small pool of artists who need to be up 100% of the time. And it's even different, of course, if you think about content versus streaming. With streaming, there's 200 million subscribers. If one of them can't connect, I mean, that sucks, but it's not like the end of the world. If I have one artist that can't do their work, it's the end of the world for them. So I think there's a big difference in mindset and how you create systems where like I don't have to worry about 200 million artists using my system. So 200 million is probably not going to crash it, but I have to worry if one person can't get in. So that's kind of like a different mindset of how you design and implement software. So I'm hoping that answers your question. Feel free to do a follow up, but um, I think it answers it. So this is actually different. How comfortable did you feel with your technical skills when you got your first software engineer job? How was your first year on the job, and what did you do to succeed? I am never comfortable. Always, I always have that. I talked about that, like that fear. I don't, I don't want to be in a job where I know everything. And my first job, I knew almost nothing. Um, so what made it work was the mentoring that I had. I mean, my boss knew she was hiring entry level engineers, so or support engineers. So it's not even entry level engineers, it's entry level support engineers. So you just had to basically like know what LS was on a command line versus like, and maybe like have heard of Python, as opposed to like someone who actually knows how to code. Um, and be willing to learn and be excited about the industry. So that's what she was looking for, is that like technical acumen, customer service, and all those things, as opposed to specific skills. So I she really set me up for success. In terms of there was a ton of documentation. You're paired up in a group, so you never got she never hired alone. She usually just had like a buddy who was new with you. So that was really nice. And then your boss is supposed to work with your boss, and your more senior peers are supposed to work with you very closely. So I think my success is predicated on um my luck in getting that position, and then those mentors that really help me. So whenever people are looking for entry level jobs, I always say there's like a lot of options, but always ask about the mentorship, because if if your mentorship is a senior engineer who is like annoyed that you're asking them questions, that's gonna be a horrible experience. You're gonna like it's gonna like make you cry. Like you're gonna like constantly feel like you can't ask questions. You're constantly gonna feel like you're bothering people. You're gonna feel like you need to succeed and you don't have the tools. So they're setting you up for failure if that is their system. If their system is this person or these people, this group of 5 people are there for you and they're there to answer questions, and then they answer questions and are like nice about it and like don't feel like give you that like, oh, you're interrupting them, like they set up the system well, that'll help you succeed. um so I always recommend people like, hey, when you're looking for a job, to like start out, make sure you ask what their mentorship is like, what the training's gonna be like, how are you gonna be supported, and how are you gonna set you up to succeed. Because I see a lot of people who feel like, they're failing, but really, you know, this you weren't set up to succeed. And I feel like my first job, I was set up to succeed, so that gave me a resiliency for the rest of my career. I don't know about the visa situation at Netflix. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Um, so someone asked about junior level positions and internships at Netflix. So every team is different. My team doesn't hire them, but I would say keep an eye out for that. I think overall Netflix is becoming more open to more junior levels, but I don't think there's a lot of options. Not just to be like honest and not sugarcoat. It's like, oh, there's plenty of opportunities for entry level junior engineers at Netflix. I think they expect a lot of you. I expect you to know a lot and just be kind of ready to go. So I don't think there's a lot of opportunities as far as I know, but it doesn't hurt to like keep an eye out and also just come back and come back and come back as you gain more skills and just like keep an eye on it. Someone asked, should I apply to a job requiring me to learn a new language? Sure, if you don't mind learning a new language, if you feel comfortable enough in your ability to accomplish like I started this job a year ago, knowing that I'd have to learn Java. And I got the advice that like every language is pretty like engineering concepts stay the same between languages. So I don't think learning a new language should be a barrier to entry, if that's what interests you. If you have literally, if you're like, I don't want to learn a language just yet, I want to like go deep on what I have, then don't apply to that job. You just have to make sure like that's what you're into, and you'll be like both bad at it and need mentorship for a little while, and like make sure that's clear with the person who's hiring you and with yourself, and you're okay with that, then I think it's fine. Like when I got this job where I didn't know the language, I'm extremely comfortable in building projects and getting them done. And I built projects from beginning to end in another language. So I'm like, well, this will just be syntax. So I felt, and I knew that I would have the support because there's so many people at Netflix that know Java really well that I could go ask them questions. So I knew I would have the support, and I knew that I was strong in other skills enough to take that leap. So, and I wanted to work at Netflix more than I didn't want to learn Java. Um, so you just have to make that decision for yourself. But I think that's where it is. Wow, we already did 30 minutes. So many questions, exciting. I don't know about the internship co-op opportunities. Specifically, I would say check the job board and see what's there, especially machine learning analytics. That is not my department. I feel like every company has a different technical interview process. True. What is the best way to be prepared for technical interviews? Um, Ask them what the process is before you start. Sometimes it's more culture fit, which is like a weird phrase that I don't even like, or sometimes it's more technical, just like knowing when you get in there. And also don't be afraid to ask for accommodations when the way they're asking you to display your knowledge is not the way that works best for you. For example, whiteboard interviews make my like chest hurt. I do not like them. I find them very tense. That's not how I work. So if someone asked me to do a whiteboard interview, now I say like no. But like previously, I would say, how about I do a take-home test? Because I have the time in the evening, and I feel like I can do it in a way that's much. I can run tests, and it's not timed, and I get to like feel my way through it, which is the way I like to work. So I will ask for that, and if it's not an opportunity, if they don't offer that, I'm like, well, maybe this isn't the right job because you won't let me display my skills in a way that will help you judge how I will succeed. Um, so it's important to know the way you feel like you showcase yourself best and kind of ask for those opportunities. Maybe you're super busy in the evening because you're a caretaker or you just have other stuff going on. So they give you a take-home test and you're like, listen, can we do a 45-minute pairing interview instead? I've gotten both those questions, and I was always prepared for it because I know that people want to display their skills in different ways. So like if the company won't let you do that, then I feel like that's on them. Um, having projects you can show in your portfolio can be helpful. My GitHub is pretty sparse, so I'm not really a good example of that. Other ways, you can kind of. I actually worked a lot on my branding, as opposed to doing a lot of studying for the interviews, like in terms of branding and in working on blog posts, conference talks, and my podcast, and things like that, that shows the type of person I am, so that people already have an idea of who they're getting when they talk to me. So, like the Netflix position came up because someone saw me speak at a conference and wanted to um, have a conversation about what I like, what I was thinking. And I still had to do the interview process, but it's a good way to get an introduction to the company and things like that. So I guess like the TLDR is like kind of know yourself and what you're best at, and try to match that to position. Like if you're really great at working on projects, and maybe just have like a really strong portfolio and say, hey, I don't have time to do a take home. Why don't you look at my code and tell me what you think? So just kind of knowing what are best, and knowing that companies should be flexible, and if they're not flexible, it might not be the right place for you. Um, What if she would consider if we receive feedback from an interview when they said it was a great culture fit, they're looking for a more technically skilled person? I think interview feedback is weird. I never know whether it's like real or not. They could just be. It's kind of like a breakup. Like who knows whether it's you, not me. Like I don't know. So I wouldn't take it too much to heart. Um, like I had an interview where someone said, I had a 6-hour interview and then they said I didn't know enough HTML, and I was like, but that wasn't on my resume. I'm a backend engineer. I never said I do HTML. What are you talking about? Um, so it's just like I wouldn't take that too personally. I would say you're gonna get better feedback if you have a mentor or your network. So like talking to people, I use Twitter and Slack, and just like I have a pretty robust network of people that I can go to and say like, hey, does this project make me look good? Does this, what do you think of my resume? Let's practice interviews, things like that. And the feedback you get from a company is just like, I don't know, just take it with a grain of salt. Um, and then, I mean, if you want to fight for it, you can say, hey, what technical skills are you talking about? Like, make them be specific. Because I think also things like culture fit and not technical are actually just cheat words that mean nothing. Because they can mean anything, right? So, like, when someone says to me, at least when they said to me, you didn't know enough HTML, I was like, you're right. I don't. Great. See you later. If that's what you wanted, I don't know any HTML. I can barely put together a div. Um, but if they said you're not technical enough, like what does that mean? It could be anything. If you feel like they might answer you, you can say, "Hey, what specific technical skills are you talking about?" They might answer you, or it might have just been like bullshit because of their biases. So it's hard to know whether that's actually useful feedback for the position or any position. There's a question about the data position at Netflix and when be the appropriate time to apply for a full-time position. Anytime, if you see a good position, a lot of teams have like rolling positions. I don't think there's anytime I'm not like helping with interviews and things like that. It's a big company, there's doing a lot of hiring. If you see a position you think you're ready for it, go check it out. What was your experience transitioning from a mid-level engineer to a senior engineer? I find myself having difficulty finding senior level tasks in my current career, so I end up spending a lot of time doing extra learning in the evenings, which makes me so unhappy. That would also make me very unhappy. All I want to do in the evenings is just watch Netflix and think about, this is all me. I did this. I'm the best. That's how I would spend my evenings. Um, so it's hard because for a while, I actually did spend my evenings. I would do like an hour a day working on conference talks and my podcast and my blog because I knew that would help me make that leap, like that branding. But that's not for everyone, like not everyone wants to do that like extra stuff. Um, I think you should think about where you want to go next, like what specifically, like what you mean by senior level tasks. Like, do you do you want to level up in mentorship? Do you want to level up in architecture? Do you want to level, what is that? And then it doesn't have to be in your department. Maybe there's another department that needs more help, and you can say, like, hey, can I shadow you? What are you doing? Can I help you with this? I'd like to do this. I think sometimes we lean too much on our managers to find these opportunities, and sometimes our managers suck and don't, or they have too much going on. Like not every manager has the time to focus on your career and your growth. So you should take it upon yourself to really figure out what's interesting you and who can help you at your current company. And if that doesn't work, find someone at another company. Look for that outside network and that outside mentorship, and find another senior engineer. I'm on Coding Coach. That's a great mentorship platform if you haven't checked that out yet, because lots of people have like profiles there, and then you can email them. And if you're like a fit, they'll come back to you. It's like very casual system. You're not like matched with someone. It's more like you can try to sell you as a mentee, and if they have time, they'll be your mentor. And I've mentored people different ways there, and usually, um, it hasn't been an ongoing relationship. It's been like this. Like I just need 30 minutes to like discuss where my career is at and where to go, and I've also done that with other people. Like when I was starting out with conferences, I talked to someone who'd done like 100 conferences, and it was just like super great speaker, and like it was really helpful for me to hear from them and hear what their experience is like, and like what that stretch goal is and how they got there. So um, I think it's see if there are any resources in different departments, um, to either shadow, pick up small projects. Um, and if it's not, if there's literally no hard problems at your company, I would find that really strange. Like everyone has hard problems, but maybe it's like a well-run tiny lifestyle business. Um, Look outside for mentorship and guidance, and maybe find a senior level job and apply to it. Because at that point, it feels like your company is keeping you back and has no opportunities for you to grow. But I think most companies have hard problems somewhere. It's just about finding it and convincing people that you can solve it for them. Also, if I'm not answering your questions or these aren't helpful, please follow up and I'll get to it. Even though somehow I'm at, it is 10:40 and I'm at 10:12 in the questions. Opinion on learning things in tech that you want to learn versus things that keep showing up on job postings. Example, learning D3 because it is badass. I'll take your word for it. I don't know what that is. Versus learning TypeScript because it will help with the jobs. I'm a very just-in-time learner. Um, I I don't do a lot of technical learning unless I have focus for it, and that's just how I learn, right? How I specifically learn is like I need a project or like something that like forces me to learn a new thing before I will learn something. So it's hard for me to like understand the mindset of just like sitting at home and like learning a new language for like no reason, just because it's fun. I mean, I get there are other people like that, but it's not really my mindset because it's just hard for me to focus. Like I've tried doing that probably like 10 times, then I realized I'm not that type of learner. If you are that type of learner, learning new things doesn't hurt you. Um, but it can get overwhelming when there's it feels like there's so much to learn and you don't have focus. So like especially when you're just starting out and you look at all the things you need to learn to even build a simple website. Like when I talked about like building a website with like 4 endpoints, I know how hard it is. I know, if I didn't have like the 10 years of experience building those different pieces until I got there, it would be very difficult. So that's why I always suggest that people focus on small things because you get that sense of accomplishment and you get that you know what you're doing it for and you don't get lost in the like learning everything, right? I've definitely taken like side jumps into like tutorials and things like that, and I've never really gotten far with them because they didn't I didn't have like a goal at the end of doing it or like a project for it. So I tend to suggest that people have a specific reason for learning something, whether it's like, I have this personal project I want to do, I have this open source project I want to do, I want to work at this company and they use this language. Because I think that helps you actually go deep on it and know when you're at, you know, a beginning, middle, and end for that. Um, but like, I'm never gonna stop people learning fun things for no reason. Like, I think that's cool, but it might it might you might not get where you want to go because it doesn't fit your goal. So it really depends like why you're learning. Like, are you learning to get a job? Are you learning to start a business? Are you learning just for fun? And kind of real figuring out like what your goal is, and then match your learning to what your goal is. How much emphasis should I put into coding challenges, and how much of the skill set do you use day to day? Um, Not none of it. Uh, do it until you get your job, and then stop. Is what I've done. Like it sucks. Like I don't know. That's why I tend to ask for coding challenges when I've gotten them. Like create this API that does 4 things. I'm like, oh, I love it because that actually reflects the day to day stuff. Um, the stuff where it does match the day to day is that like problem solving skill of like, okay, an artist wants to do this or a user wants to do this. How do you take this big problem that they have and break it down into small pieces and then even smaller pieces and actually accomplish that? That's what'll get you far. So learning to break a problem down into like that. So like the parts that are useful is that So if you think of a normal coding challenge, you get like, okay, what are the data types? Where am I putting the loops? How am I optimizing the loops? How am I maybe not using loops at all? And I get to use a database index and we don't have to worry about that. Okay, now that we have a database, what other architecture are we going to put on top of that database to actually make this a real system? So, that idea of breaking down a problem is super useful. I would say doing a bubble sort has never happened to me, except in coding challenges where I've complained that this is a dumb challenge. So so some of the challenges are good where they're like, here's a problem that I have. How do you solve it? Like, hey, I want to make a text messaging app. How do you do it? That actually comes up day to day because people say like, hey, I want this, or my day really sucks. How can you fix it? Or this product needs to, I need to add Google food ordering to this product. How do I set that up? That's what really works and informs the day to day. The actual like algorithm is so low level, I don't think it really affects. I think the only thing that comes up is like, if your code is slow, what did you do? But like with like microservices and database indexes, like most of the time, like your code is not the problem, and you just like the algorithm's not the problem. It's like how you implemented the architecture is usually the problem, in my experience. So again, everything here, I just want to take like with a grain of salt. This is all my experience. I know experiences are very different. Also, I've been in it 10 years and the industry's changed in the last 10 years. And I have different privileges than other people have. So just like I don't want you to come out of this saying like, oh, this is what I should definitely do. You should be like, this is one opinion of how things went for me. Hopefully there's something you can like pull out of it, but it's not like the end all be all. I don't want to make any proclamations about how the world is. And how tech is, just like my experience. How's work-life balance at Netflix? For me, it's great. No one complained that I took an hour off to do this today. I just turned off Slack and did it. Um, in general, it's less about how many hours you're working and more what you agree to accomplish and whether you accomplish it. And I try to set myself um, very specific goals. And I'm very honest with people. Like people ask, like, "Oh, are you gonna look at this over the weekend?" I'm like, "No, sorry, I don't know. Netflix isn't gonna burn down if I don't." But there's also support. Like I had an incident last night at 8 o'clock, and from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, I was dealing with an incident. So that happens. But I think it's balanced out by the fact that like no one cares if I go on errands during the day. No one's like, no one's like checking in on me as long as I attend meetings. And then I push out PRs that I have finished presentations after 6 weeks. So, it's for me, it's been great. I also set very strong boundaries because I'm very confident in the fact that I can accomplish things. And I set that pattern with people like, hey, I won't tell you I will shoot the moon. I will tell you I will build a brick path from the sidewalk to the front door, and that's all you're gonna get. And then when you get it, you're gonna be happy because that's what I told you you're gonna get. So I think setting that boundaries for yourself, whether at Netflix or any other company, is really important, and not letting people set you up for failure by asking you for a ton of things. Yeah, just this morning, someone asked me for something I thought was a small issue, but then I dug in. Like I thought they just needed me to like spin up an instance for them. And I was like, great, I can do this. And then they asked me for like a wildly different thing than we've ever done before. And I was like, all right, how about I like write this down for you and like get back to you in like 4 to 6 weeks? Uh, so it's all about, I think, at any company making sure you're set up to succeed. Um, and taking the time that you need. And if you're not, I don't want you to, I always advise people like, think about where the system is set up versus like yourself. Like don't think, oh, I'm not accomplishing enough. Like, well, maybe they gave you too much work to do. Or like maybe they didn't budget correctly. Like, I mean, sometimes it's you, sometimes people are like lazy and they'll do things, but like most of the time, in my experience, people want to succeed and people love technology and want to solve problems that make people happy. So it's usually something in the system that either you can push back on or your boss can push back on, and just making those expectations clear. Um, yeah, and just like, yeah, I know some people work really late at night, some people work early in the morning, especially right now. Like I've been in meetings where people are like, kids have like run to the screen and they're like, hold on, I gotta go. And then like they run out to like attend to that. And no one I know of has ever said anything. But also keep in mind at big companies, I don't know what all the teams are like. Like I can't speak for all the company. I can speak about my personal experience setting boundaries and being okay with it. What's a project you worked on that you thought, wow, it was a fun and awesome experience? The coolest thing I've ever done was work on movies. Having my name in the credits of a movie, the first time I literally cried. Like I thought it was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I mean that's part of what has kept me in entertainment is that knowing it's easy for me to bring joy and it's hard for me to bring pain, like both those things. Like in tech, it's really easy to work on unethical products. And like I could see it because you get a lot of money to do that. And it's really hard to say no. So like I try to focus on an industry that like the worst I could do is make a movie no one likes. I don't know. I tried. Some people will like it, some people don't. I mean, I worked on Oz the Great and Powerful, and like that was great for like 10-year-olds. I didn't think it was that great, but some people liked it. So like the joy of entertainment really drives me, and I really like the joy of entertainment and the joy of helping artists because I know how tough it is to be an artist because I tried and it didn't work out for me. I'm not a good artist. I'm a much better engineer than I am an artist, and people are like when people say engineering is hard, I'm like, art is hard. Art is so hard. Like engineering, you generally know if you're right because things work. Art, it's so subjective. There's no right. I mean, in engineering, there's also like lots of different ways of doing anything. But like, if your site is up and moving quickly and you have a lot of customers, you probably did it right. In art, mm, people like it. Maybe I don't know. Was it good? What does it say? There's so much vagueness there. It's just kind of like I like engineering and I like being able to help artists focus on the art instead of worrying about their computer because they shouldn't have to worry about that. Do you suffer from imposter syndrome? I feel like the longer I've been in engineering, the more I've learned that no one knows what they're doing. We all are just doing our best. There's no like secret super geniuses out there that I've worked with that get everything right the first time and everything is perfect and they're just killing it in every single skill set, whether it's soft skills or technical skills, and they're just like the best at everything. So like we're all imperfect. So I try to focus on like whenever I feel like, oh man, I messed something up, I try to like think about in the past, like I always think about my past successes to inform my past, my current failures. Like, oh, in the past, I've learned a new thing. I was able to succeed. So I know in the last couple of weeks, someone was like, hey, let's explore Packer, a new Docker image building system that I'd never heard of and had to Google. I was like, well, I don't know. I figured out this stuff before, so I'll probably figure this stuff out. So it's kind of thinking about the past and how I've accomplished, and also knowing that everyone else is trying it. Everyone's a mixed bag of skills and levels. Like no one's the best at everything, right? So like, you know, I have one coworker who I lean on a lot for like Java expertise, but like I make fun of his Python code because it's really fun for me. Because I have that like 10 years experience in Python. So like it's like a joy for me and like a fun game for us when he sends me Python scripts. Because like my Java is so like low, like my skill on that is so low that he's constantly like, oh, da, 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 like going really fast. I'm like, I never heard of any of these words. So it's just a matter of knowing that like everyone is like this mixed bag. So you shouldn't feel like anyone. If anyone feels like if it feels like anyone else is intimidating and you don't know as much as everyone else, just know that they feel that way on certain skills, right? And they're not. No one's going to be the best at everything. So you could just be the best at stuff. You could be great at lots of things and not so great at some things and get better at them. Are there any support engineer roles open? I don't know. At different companies, maybe. Um, I guess you're asking at Netflix, and I would check the job board. How do I manage learning new languages and new technologies? I try it out. I always try to get into a shell as fast as possible, or into an IDE as fast as possible, because I tend to just like looking through tutorials and looking at documentation doesn't like do much for me. But I try to like take the problem and do like small bits of it. So recently with Packer, like I immediately like made a new repo, called it Packer testing, put a file in there, started running Packer and like, what does this do? What does this do? What does this do? Because I like seeing it for myself. So that's how I approach things. I try to go into it as fast as possible. Are most Netflix roles Python related? No, it is a lot of Java. Um, Did I transition from software development to machine learning or data science or anything unrelated to the original field? I went to art school, so yes, I transitioned. I don't know what and QA roles is. Maybe it was part of a different question. Most, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Are there any openings? I don't know. I would check the job board. What are the most common languages? Java. But you can use whatever you want. Java, Python, Go are common ones I've seen people use. But there's a lot of freedom to try new things out. So if you come in learning a different language, if you come in with ideas of how things can be done better in a different language, people will listen. I also don't know a lot about like the front end languages, since I try to avoid that because UI is scary. What's the most critical skill you believe you possess? Ability to break down problems, say no to features, and know that I've solved problems before. I'll solve this next problem. Like every time at the beginning, it's like there's no way I'll solve this problem, and then you solve the problem. So just the building up that backlog of success helps you. Is Netflix working remotely right now? Yes, this is my house, not in the Netflix office. It'd be a lot prettier if this is a Netflix office. Or maybe if I literally hung up anything in the 7 months that I've lived in this house. There are still opportunities to work remotely. You know, it depends on the department, depends on the team, depends where you live. Did you face any adversity in your career on Netflix, and how did you handle it? I think it's more when people want to go either in different technical directions or different product directions, and it's about either convincing people that yours is the right way or just doing it and seeing if they like it. I don't know, maybe they didn't like the idea, but maybe they'll like the actual API when they get it. So I think it's being very flexible and taking in ideas. Like, you know, I think I mentioned the short pitches thing, which I really like. I like writing out my problems and then like running ideas by people because it really helps me like utilize their expertise and things. I think because I think the last problem was about Docker images, and I'm very new to Docker and Packer and all that stuff. So I was like, hey, I'm trying out this thing. What do you think? So it's like getting that back and forth about technical ideas. If you're asking about adversity in general in the tech industry, obviously it's very real. Obviously, I'm gonna have a different experience than a black woman or someone with different identities than me. I obviously have a level of privilege being what I look like, but I don't have some privilege because I don't look like the dominant, you know, cis white male people in tech. So like, there's always going to be that there, and I don't want to sugarcoat and say like that didn't affect my career. It doesn't affect my day to day. It's there. It's about finding the opportunities where they are more inclusive and making sure they're not setting up to fail. Whether they're setting up to fail because they're a bad company or because of the way you look and the way they perceive you, that happens all the time. And I still think it's worth it to work in tech because the money's great and the problems are interesting and the flexibility is amazing. And those are the reasons I work in tech, and I love making movies. But it doesn't mean there aren't systemic problems that's going to affect people of different identities worse than they affect me. So I don't want to say they're not there. I don't want to say it won't affect you. You might be gaslit or pushed out of roles or not set up for promotions. And it's just trying to be like, the only thing I think of is trying to be an advocate for yourself and try to change the system, but it can be very difficult and very draining and very time consuming. So really my only advice is saying it's not your fault and that it, you know, you can only do your best against the system. So there's nothing I can tell you to like about that. I mentioned EC2 earlier. How much of your job work is with cloud infrastructure as opposed to writing code? I think cloud infrastructure is very interesting, and it was part of the last couple of years I've been trying to move more into it. So I would say like right now, like 50-50, because especially at Netflix, it tends to be that engineers deploy their own code. There are DevOps engineers I can lean on and other people I can to learn things, but being able to deploy my own code, I feel like it's like a certain sort of magic that gives me this joy, knowing that like I don't have to worry about someone else gatekeeping me from creating something. I can learn from them how to do it myself. So like I find that super interesting and super empowering. So that's why I do it. But it's not like if you're a UI engineer, you have to worry about all the way back to the DevOps. but I personally find it interesting, so I want to make it a part of my job. Is it true that big companies blackball your application for 6 months after you apply? I have no idea. Maybe. I don't know. Someone shared Coding Coach. Thank you for adding the link. It's really awesome. Don't just discourage if people don't reply to you, because sometimes I don't reply to people because they're asking for different coaching than I like to do, but you can probably find the right coach because there's a ton of people in there. Do I work on animation art projects in your time off? No, I lay on the couch and watch Netflix. When you're starting in a large code base, is there a general place to go in the code base to better understand it quickly? I go business logic first. I try to understand what the product is and how people are supposed to be using it. So if they're like design slides, or I can watch a customer use it, or like when I worked at Channel, I was like, how do I order food, like, and try it myself. And then I usually go to like, okay, when I went to order food in the UI, where's it calling in the background? Like, what network calls are doing? So I always start business logic first, because that helps me understand the path into the code base. So like whoever's using it and how they're using it, I start there and then see how it affects the actual code. What questions do you ask yourself to ensure you stay on track when problem solving? With projects, is this going to solve the main problem? If not, then this is diversion. I do that with meetings a lot too. Like people will try to like sidetrack, and I'm always like, no, I came here with a goal, and this is my goal, and anything outside of it is like a diversion. So I try to always keep my goal in mind. And if I feel myself wandering, I think, is this part of my goal? When I'm solving an error, it's like, what is the most likely scenario? Like, before I start getting into like esoteric issues. See, because you probably added a comma, or it's probably from the last deploy, or it's probably from something more simple rather than like AWS crash. That's probably not it. They're up all the time. You probably did something in your code. Like, what are the most likely scenarios? How do you and your colleagues at Netflix really feel about we are a team, not a family? My colleagues are not my family. I go to work and then I come home, and the Netflix TV shows are my family. Wait, did I get all the questions? Is that everyone? I tried to do like a speed run for the last couple. I'd be really fast on the ones I don't know anything about. Oh wait, I see one more. Which of your past engineering positions help you the most in your current role? Being a support engineer and learning customer service and humility and how to help people and empathy, I think is extremely important. Technical skills can be learned on Google. Understanding why someone is sad and frustrated and how you can help them is something you learn by doing, and it's a lot easier to do it than to like teach it. It's so much easier for me to teach someone Python or Java than it is to teach them to like be nice to people and understand the customers. So I feel like that empathy and communication is very hard to interview for, but it's very nice to have. And when I was actually interviewing entry level people, I would ask, have you worked in a restaurant? Have you worked in retail? Like I want that more than I worked in a computer science degree. Like knowing they've had to like time management and customer service and empathy, like those tend to be better engineers than someone who's had no practical experience in dealing with people, because it's just like I can give them the Python tutorial. I can't teach them how to be nice to people. Like that's like way harder. So I much prefer that. All right. Wait. Let's see. How do I ensure performance when breaking out microservices? I do business logic first, and then I do stress testing at scale. Obviously, Netflix is really nice for testing at scale because everyone uses it. If you had to cut off your hands and replace it with animals, which animals would you choose and why? I'm not answering that question. That's ridiculous. Would you leave your art off your LinkedIn if you're still pursuing art and coding? It's tough. As long as you have the coding, like you have to think to yourself, like, what is my brand and what people what do I want people to think about me when they see me and their first impression? So my LinkedIn is geared towards engineering roles, even though I've experienced a lot of different things. So as you want to think about what your current goal is and what you want to get out of it, and I gear your LinkedIn and your website and portfolio to what you want it to be. Are any plans on Netflix versus reliance on AWS? I don't know. I see we're at time, but I see we're actually out of questions, so we could just wrap up. If there's any last questions, I have like 5 more minutes, and then I have to go to another meeting. So, but it looks like I nailed it. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. If you try to connect with me on LinkedIn and don't tell me why, I will probably reject it. And like that should be like a base thing for everyone. Like if I don't know you and you at least don't tell me that, like, hey, I saw you at this event, like that'll probably connect with you. If you don't tell me anything, I'm like, I don't know who you are. You're probably a bot. I half the people I think are bots. So if you don't send me a message, I think that's what you are. Yeah, thank you for all the questions. I've never had this many questions in AMA. I didn't even get past like my Shrek story, so like that was really exciting for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for asking all your questions. And it's just been really entertaining. Michelle, you're super entertaining. I can listen to you like all day. I think you keep it very real. And yeah, you answer questions like I don't think I've ever seen the realness, or just like I really like your approach on some of these questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I need to sell anyone that tech is great when they pay you a lot of money. So I want you to know what you're getting into.
Fair.
Like when people ask like, why do you do it? Like, I don't know. I get to work the hours I want to work, get paid a lot of money, and make cool things. Like that's like I'm not gonna say the love of Java. Java's too wordy. I don't care if you love Java. There's too many words in it. Python's better.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for this AMA. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please feel free to connect with Michelle, like she said, on LinkedIn and Twitter. I saw some of you drop your LinkedIn. That was awesome move, Courtney. And yeah, so definitely check out everyone's LinkedIn, and guys, this is how you make connections, right? And learn from each other. So thank you for this session and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.